This video is brought to you by Manscape.com. I've moved into my first home, gotten engaged, and gained a new family member. So I guess I can say that One Piece has been there for some of the most important moments of my life. I can't wait to continue this story with you all, but until then, as always, I've been Totally Not Mark, and thank you so much for watching. Ladies, gentlemen, and that technicolored rainbow in between, we are back. And for those of you that didn't have to wait the 2 years for this continuation of my review series, what's it like being God's best friend? To be quite honest, when I said those parting words way back when, I never in my wildest dreams could have imagined almost 2 years passing between episodes in this series. But then again, that is the nature of Wano and One Piece, I guess. And as of writing this video, it's still technically not over. But given that Oda decided to make the raid at Onigashima longer than some of the arcs in the series, I figured it was perfect for its own video, or should I say, videos. Reviewing the raid at Onigashima was a titanic task, and due to this arc being incredibly dense and the anime having covered almost exactly half of it, I thought it would be nice if I made sure that this first return video was primed, safe, and ready for the anime onlys watching today. Meaning this week I am covering the first half of Onigashima's raid and concluding it once and for all next week. So, with that out of the way, once again, I'm Totally Not Mark, and these are my first impressions of, thoughts on, and review for the crazy, chaotic, magical, legendary, and long overdue continuation on this wonderful voyage. I am of course speaking of the illustrious One Piece's Raid on Onigashima. Whew, boy, does it feel good to be back! Back on the shores of Wano, or should I say Onigashima, primed and ready to tackle the oncoming war between some of the highest bounties in the land of One Piece. But I must say, the landscape of the One Piece online community has changed drastically since I last added to this series almost 2 years ago. And with that said, I'll be honest, comes with a level of wavering uncertainty concerning how best I should share my thoughts on this material. After all, the raid in Onigashima is controversial. And if there's one thing anime-focused content creators want to avoid, it's controversy. What the hell is that? On one hand, I am massively excited to dive back into One Piece. It's a story I've loved from the very beginning, and the thought of once again getting the chance to express my thoughts on this story I enjoy with all of you is invigorating. However, on the other hand, this will be the first time I've written a review for a section of the story while also being acutely aware of how the community surrounding this specific portion online has been receiving it, with a sizable sect of the One Piece community banding together under the banner of voicing their distaste and dislike for the raid itself, with some of the most popular figures getting hate for simply sharing their honest opinions online concerning it. Now, this sort of stop that. This type of division or lose-lose scenario would have bothered the mark I was 625 days ago, but since then, I have undergone a metamorphosis, a journey, a quest in reviewing and disagreeing with so many of the world's largest online fandoms that my bounty within the online anime community at this point must be larger than even Luffy's in his world. And so, with that said, let's try to have fun with this one, okay? Like always, I love, like, and dislike elements of any story. I only ask for your time and understanding as I try to explain my thought process behind why I might feel one way or the other about something. So, without further ado, let's go through this piece by piece. Kicking off at the beginning. The raid commences. This raid is bananas, has some of the most breakneck, frantic pacing towards the start, in a good way, and presented me with scenes that gave me chills. Furthermore, the anime managed to supersede my wildest and highest expectations for this story, managing to present the material in a fashion that I found not only resonant as a fan of the series, but utterly gorgeous as an artist and human being. Which is why I want to give the anime its own section later, so look forward to that. However, this wasn't to say that I didn't have concerns for how this raid might be structured and presented in this story. If the pop culture machine is anything to go by these days, whether it be in the East Or in the West, great stories with action interwoven into the DNA of the storytelling can be both terrific and revolutionary one minute, and utterly devastating in another. When it comes to grand epic battles of good versus evil, one aspect above all else that I always like to make sure is there is that of an emotional through line, a goal, story arc, or target to be kept in the reader's eyes and mind as the story and action marches onward. It's difficult to compare Wano's raid on Onigashima to anything that's come before it due to its tremendous scale and length, but when it came to One Piece's Marineford, I think that arc did a masterful job of creating and following an emotional through line too, providing a clear and obvious narrative thread that served to deliver that arc's most poignant moment, satisfying us as readers and watchers in the process. In Wano, while structurally similar, some chess pieces are different, others are missing, and even a few have been promoted since that outing in Marineford all those years ago. And despite the goal for our main characters being ace in Marineford, it's more so a battle for the future of the One Piece world as we know it. Hoisted on the shoulders of the older and present generations, Luffy's newer and younger generation is afforded a luxury they otherwise can't enjoy in Wano. In Marineford, while Whitebeard and the older generations were allowed to take the reins and sing their swan song, they also in the process took care of the battle's logistics and any loose ends that might require seeing to, freeing up Luffy to focus on the emotional throughline of the battle without needing to worry about other aspects that were less interesting. Needless to say, this was by design, and in Wano, Oda made sure to see to that aspect of the story too. Now Luffy's generation has to take the world for themselves and lead the charge. Now Luffy has to carry the war. He's the leader. And surprisingly, it works elegantly, naturally, and extremely well within the themes and framework of the series and arc itself all at once. One Piece again highlighting the stark contrast between who they once were versus who they are now and want to be. Furthermore, something the Onigashima raid did masterfully well was that it created a prologue to the coming war or battle that truly captured my imagination and set the stage for the coming conflict beyond what my wildest dreams could have prepared me for. Having spent so long being beaten down by Wano's despair, bottomless corruption, misfortune, and torture, only for us to get a taste of what it once was in Oden's flashback before being stabbed in the back, left feeling isolated and alone, looking out at a sea filled with possibilities of a raid failing before it even began. Once Luffy and co arrived, my hype level rivaled that of Marineford. But we haven't started the fight yet, and before we do, Oda needs to inform us of a few things. We must first understand the arena. Marineford had an iconic arena that played a vital role in determining the flow of the battle as well as the obstacles it presented. And so too did Wano's Onigashima, an island with a skull-shaped structure housed within it a number of different themed floors filled with their own unique battles and enemies that need their own unique approaches. And atop this demonic structure, the ultimate goal and rematch awaiting Luffy, Kaido. Now allied with Big Mom. It seemed simple enough, and in the earliest stages it was. Oda did a wonderful job establishing the layout of the area, establishing what teams are where, and even created a natural means for the gang to infiltrate the building in disguises manifested by Kinemon. And from there, our Straw Hats splinter into their own respective squadrons to tackle the relevant floors, freeing up the main entree Luffy and those in his follow to contest Kaido and Big Mom atop this structure. As things are conceptually, this is an exciting and fun way to present the coming conflict. It has built-in tension with them sneaking into the structure without actually going in all guns blazing, which is absolutely what Luffy does later. We have our gang split up for good reasons, we have a rough idea of what this area is structured like, and we know what the goal is. To take back Wano from Kaido, to liberate its people, and with Momo still in the clutches of Kanjuro the traitor, and that cockroach Orochimaru still knocking about, there's plenty for us to anticipate as the battle commences. Now I know Cousin It from the Addams Family is real #YasQueen squad goals, but it's time to get trimmed up with Manscaped's new Lawnmower 4.0 electric trimmer. You get this wonderful waterproof shaver and more when you purchase their new Performance Package 4.0. Along with it comes the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant and the Crop Reviver Ball Toning Spray to keep you smelling fresh all damn day. But did you know that for a limited time only, when you pick up the Performance Package 4.0, you also also get 2 free gifts: the Shed Travel Bag and the Manscaped Anti-Chafing Boxers. These cooling boxer briefs might actually be one of the coolest parts of this collection. What's the point in manscaping your bits like a pro if you're just gonna throw on some rags afterwards? Not only are Manscaped's boxers extra comfy, but they have fancy crop cooling technology to keep you cool and dry all day long. The fabric's super soft and comes in a wide range of sizes, all the way up to XXL. And what's neat is that you get to opt into their peak hygiene plan, which means you'll get a new pair every cycle straight to your door. If all that sounds good, then head over to manscaped.com and use promo code NOTMARK20 for 20% off, free international shipping, and 2 free gifts. Underwear to your door. Your balls will thank you. Bye.
But take a look at that iceberg! If you don't turn now, we'll hit it!
So much for that iceberg!
Okay, look, let's slow down a bit and just take stock of where we are. I think early on I was most impressed with Oda's ability to create comedic moments within the seriousness and chaos of the broader raid itself. Showing the gang react to Luffy going to make things worse and Zoro going after Luffy, to which the gang remarks, "He's only gonna get lost." Rooting all of this, of course, in the character of the series is built upon was a genius and lovely idea. Similarly to how some comedians deliver phenomenally dramatic performances like Robin Williams in Good Will Hunting and Mrs. Doubtfire, Oda leverages his comedic chops to help avoid this battle becoming one-note and downtrodden by the gravitas of the occasion also. Again, and I'm sure many people might have overlooked this moment, but completely driven by character, there's a short but brilliant exchange between Luffy and Zoro that I absolutely adored. I never really thought to speak of this aspect when I was reviewing the series a number of years ago. However, having spoken to fans of the Zoro character recently, I've personally found a new appreciation for the character myself. The duo of Zoro and Luffy is exceptional across this series. And despite one of them being stoic to the point of silence on a number of occasions, they have perhaps some of the best chemistry in the series and fittingly don't share too many exchanges to share that. Zoro is a formidable character, one that offers a lot in the way of brawn and ability to the Straw Hats, but what I think is often overlooked regarding him is his effectiveness as the backbone of the greater Straw Hat crew themselves. A few weeks ago, I spoke on how much I adored the battle Luffy shared with Usopp during Water 7, and a main component as to why I found that to be so resonant and effective, in essence spawned from the realism and sense of division it created amongst the crew themselves, and few contributed to that feeling more so than Zoro himself, for he was the one who stood in Luffy's corner, backing up every uncertain but stern decision he made or was forced to make towards Usopp. And when Usopp wanted to get back to the Straw Hats, Luffy was willing to accept Usopp's excuses if it meant he could get his friend back. However, Zoro made sure Luffy stood his ground to get the apology he was owed. And this, I think, makes Zoro the perfect first mate. The perfect second in command and complement to Luffy's boundless ambition, helping him to remain focused in moments where he might be unwieldy and to back him up whatever it takes when the moment calls for it. And chapter 980 has a wonderful moment that echoes that very aspect of their dynamic, with Zoro having chased after Luffy, who is now just blown his cover due to the indulgence of the ruling class and soldiers. In response, Zoro complains, but once he figures out the situation and the motivation behind it, this big brotherly bond is in full force once again. And switching gears from that dynamic, we even get moments where Kid himself goes face to face with rivals of his from the very generation he belongs to alongside Luffy, with excuses like, do you really think you tip the balance in favor of yourselves against one of the 4 emperors being the order of the day? And once again, in line with each of their characters, it's not by chance the rebellious thought leaders found themselves aligned against Kaido. Those with ambition that genuinely want to grab the world by the reins and steer it in the right direction are fighting Kaido. And those too scared to challenge the status quo are stuck beneath his dogmatic and tyrannical thumb. It's a subtle but again very effective aspect of the villain's characterization that helps to create an obvious and easy side to root for. However, with all of this good stuff, there are some small issues that eventually cascade into much larger ones for me as I read on. And it all starts with the conveyance within the raid itself. So, what do I mean? Well, Dotted throughout this raid are instances of exposition, text from Oda directly to us, where in lieu of demonstrating a particular group or character's positioning, he just tells us. This struck me as strange. Normally, One Piece is meticulous in its setup and desire to let the story do the talking. We don't need to be told where they are by some disembodied voice or narration bubble. We normally find this out through context clues in the story, like when Sanji went to the sea train in Water 7, or visual cues like in Arlong Park or Alabasta. Looking at stories like Skypiea or even massive events like Marineford, characters establishing shots and the story's flow would fill us in on the details normally. However, here in Wano, for some reason, it doesn't. And I think I might know why. Having spent the entire story on the Wano mainland, getting to know that region and the area, now having moved to another island, one that has multiple layers or floors, filled with countless characters, many of which are newly introduced during the Wano arc itself, all duking it out in, honestly at this point, very similar styles of battle, now Oda finds himself in a situation where he wants to have, for example, a pleasure hall. When we as an audience don't know what they look like all too well, we don't know where it is in relation to the rest of the crew fighting, and that's the problem. Furthermore, with everyone on every floor fighting, that too creates environments that look rather similar. Understanding this, Oda later introduces much more unique types of fighting as well as different targets for the gang to hit on each of the respective floors, but even including the most diverse examples for me, it didn't help all that much. Impel Down handled this issue fantastically, and I honestly thought it had a similar problem to overcome. However, it did overcome this by creating easy to convey visual identifiers for each floor of the compound respectively. However, I will also make the caveat that Impel Down didn't have the issue of having to dart back and forth between different perspectives. It just focused on Luffy, really. And this all isn't to say, by the way, that this issue bothered me tremendously at this point. However, it is, I think, the first sign of a much more all-consuming issue I encountered later on towards the middle of the raid itself. In the meantime, I was still enthralled by the feverish pacing and the intrigue each newly revealed ruffle to this battle potentially offered. Like this one! Yeah, Marco's here! This I did not see coming, and I wondered why, seeing as I should have known he was on his way in some capacity. But whatever about that, he'll have his own moments later. But now we gotta clear the red carpet for the main man of the hour! Odin, or should I say, the internet's new favorite, Yamato. Yamato is a character that's grown in popularity enormously since their unveiling, and to be honest, I was blown away to see that they were revealed so early on in this story. I had forgotten how early they were introduced. So now we get the offspring of Kaido running about in opposition to his father, channeling the spirit of Odin himself, all the while sort of acting like Odin in many respects. It's an interesting ruffle to this story, and again led me to reconsider how key events in this conclusion to this epic battle might play out in the future. And just as that happened... Yeah, this is something of a trend for Orochi this battle, and given how awful of a person he is, I'm kinda here for it. I kinda wanna see him die again and again and again. And while we're focusing on Kaido's section of the ongoing skirmish, I think it's important to touch on a vital aspect of the story, a narrative thread that extends far beyond this raid and even this very arc. I am of course talking about Kozuki Momonosuke. The quest to find oneself isn't a story One Piece tries to avoid in any capacity. Striving for your dreams and staying true to who you are of course the core tenets of many Jump stories, including One Piece. We've seen it with the likes of Nami in Arlong Park, Robin in Enies Lobby more famously, and now we see it through the character of Momo in Wano. Across perhaps the longest journey to find oneself in this series. Having come into focus for us within what we thought at the time was a side plot in Punk Hazard, he's introduced as a regret-filled, ashamed, scared, and misguided young boy. And yet, despite the less than ideal circumstances that befell both he and those looking over him, thanks to the kindness of our main crew, despite finding himself in the clutches of the very man that scares him more than any other on this planet, he's able to show his growth and resolve as a character, proclaiming his namesake in defiance of what Kaido stands for. Demonstrating to everyone within earshot, and of course us reading and watching, that he is no longer the sniveling child he once was, but now a strong and capable young man. It's a stunning payoff, I thought, to what was a long and winding character arc, a payoff that, alongside others, were all concentrated and confined to only the beginning of this raid. And I honestly think that's remarkable. A little while ago, I made a video called The Day Dragon Ball Died, and in it I tried to describe why I found that to quite frankly be the case in at least one meaningful capacity. And that very capacity being that I thought the fighting was no longer a driving force for the narrative. And while I have my issues with One Piece's choices in conveyance, there's no denying the sheer volume of compelling, character-focused and narratively driven story beats that occupy and populate the pages of this manga chapter after chapter. When I say that reading this week to week versus reading it all in one go is a massively different experience, I want to emphasize that that is actually the case. Chills, man. Absolute chills. It's what we have character-driven stories for. We followed these troubled individuals, seeing their journey, their past, their ups, their tragic downs, and naturally their goals. With one final, albeit massive dragon-shaped obstacle standing before them, it's a standoff worthy of the time dedicated to it. Oda wants us to take notice and recognize this as a monumental moment in this story, and it absolutely felt that way for me as I read it. I apologize also if my reactions to this story at this moment sound unwieldy and somewhat frantic. If it feels like I'm dashing from one awesome moment to the next sharing my thoughts, that's because I kind of am, and it's by design. In reality, I'm trying to capture something of a glimpse of what it might have been like to discuss this with me as I was reading the early portion. With grand moment after grand moment, prophetic reunitings after massive set pieces that conclude with amazing group shots ready to catapult us into the next exciting sequence, all of this takes center stage without delay. It is frantic in every sense of the word, and in a brilliant way that's both exciting and appropriate for the story being told. There's no negatives really at this point to speak of outside of that minor conveyance issue. However, still, at the forefront of my mind at this point was one thing. Kaido versus Luffy, the rematch. A long time has passed since their last encounter, both in real life and sort of in the One Piece story. Maybe not, I don't know. And in the back of my mind, despite enjoying all of the pageantry and One Piece awesomeness, I was eagerly awaiting the moment that I was certain would change the story forever. I could not wait for this rematch. Okay, so let's set the scene. Kaido's on the roof, Luffy's on his way to the roof to challenge Kaido, and between Luffy and the big dragon himself stands a number of formidable foes that are all being ordered to stop him no matter the cost. It's an easy to understand structure for this challenge, and honestly I'm hyped. But perhaps more importantly, in many ways this feels like the ultimate test for the Straw Hat Pirates themselves. Along this difficult ascent up to the roof, Luffy and his gang encounter a colorful litany of enemies that at any other point in the story could have spelt the end for their little crew. However, when they point out as each of them drops off one after another to buy time for Luffy, that was a long time ago. Encountering obstacles that would rival the likes of Oars, Zoro slices through them as if it were nothing special. Luffy assumes Gear 4, screams, "Things are different now." Not just a battle cry, but a promise to us as viewers and readers that our time spent with these characters has served a purpose. We believe in Luffy when he says this. No longer the crew that would run, instead they have now become something worthy themselves of running from. And I think that's something not many manga get to enjoy, certainly not like One Piece does anyway. It's like every turn of the page I'm greeted with another reminder of their character progression, whether it be through Sanji, Jinbei, Nami, or Robin, who all get their own chance to shine in this conflict, let me add, but more on that next week, with each of them making it their mission to conserve Luffy's strength to hold the line with each respective enemy they encounter. It's simple, but if you don't get the simple stuff right, then the more complicated stuff later on either doesn't matter or comes off as pretentious. I'm going to come clean for a second because I personally haven't looked at a lot of the anime. And even within this video, I've only really taken a look at less than a handful. However, one thing I did notice while I was watching those episodes was how well Oda's manga pages with their numerous panels end up translating as a storyboard for a given animation. This was a massive upside I saw for those watching this anime. In the past, and indeed with later portions of this arc that I will struggle to get through in this review and manga, that doesn't happen to be the case. However, with this samurai fight, Oda knocked it out of the park. Pages felt much less cluttered when the time came for the action, more interesting layouts started to make themselves known, and the action could breathe. There was even a moment in the short exchange that made me audibly gasp. I'm serious, I gasped, and it was for this. Chapter 1000. Chapter 1000 was a landmark event I touted early on in my One Piece journey that I said time and again I wanted to be present for. That it wasn't every day a series like One Piece comes along, let alone reaches 1000 chapters. And this might be my favorite point in the early battle. For all the aspects of it that I've praised prior, I think this sequence is the moment where the storylines in the battle felt the most in sync with each other. The chaos takes a breath, and for the first time it truly feels like a structure I can immerse myself entirely within. And it's achieved through contrast. During this section, there are a multitude of POVs to consider. However, really there are only two main ones at this time that we should focus on. Luffy's and the samurais. Each has their unique tasks and both feed into the effectiveness of each other. Naturally, with regards to the samurai's struggle against Kaido, understanding that this situation with them is worsening is made all the more tense as we know Luffy will arrive at any moment to help their worsening situation. The drama and tenseness of the occasion is made all the more palpable when contrasted with the lighthearted blitz Luffy section provides. Unlike the samurai scene that are terrified and standing their ground, Luffy just runs straight past everyone in his way to beeline it to the roof to tango with Kaido. However, while these two scenes have key differences used for the purpose of contrast, they're also importantly similar. They both demonstrate a group of friends, allies, or warriors standing by one another to help each other achieve their goal. Where the samurai stand by each other, so too do the Straw Hats stand by their captain. It's uplifting within both scenes, of course, however, when one comes out on top, another doesn't. This discovery atop the structure is shocking. Watching as Kinemon leaves his dying wish to Luffy, the upbeat and somewhat lighthearted nature of Luffy's scramble to the top becomes overshadowed by the weight of this new responsibility. Getting the chance to sit back and watch as Luffy and the major players in this conflict converge before Kaido and Big Mom was a thrilling moment. I love these calmer instances before the storm, and I think that while the manga did a great job with this scene, I don't think I've seen a better adaptation committed to any other anime. Because Megumi Ishitani demonstrated how impressive she was as an anime director with episode 1015 covering this very material. And while I will most definitely be covering it later on in this video, I need to mention it at this point too, it's just that damn good. The fight that takes place here is great too, perhaps some of the best action paneling I've seen from Oda in quite some time. A prominent complaint I've had for this raid that I will most definitely be addressing later on as its cluttered nature increases, hindering my personal ability in understanding and enjoying what's been shown to me has been the paneling itself, cluttered as it is. However, with this fight and indeed the samurai fight leading up to it, there are large panels everywhere, interesting layouts and compelling set pieces, flashing to and fro from characters like Kid, Zoro and Luffy as they each try their hand at toppling the unstoppable Kaido. It's a compelling set of circumstances, one that's allowed to breathe and shine through these very pages, one that's outcome determines the future of not just Wano but the One Piece world as it stands. All they have to do is keep the pressure on. This is bad, but it is hype. It's so cool and things are immeasurably tense. And while things are tense at this very moment, let's take a step back and talk about some of the people and moments that helped to turn this into this. The anime. Despite covering the manga in this video, one thing that's impossible to ignore is the sheer quality of the anime adaptation in this arc. Week after week, spectacular scenes from Wano are paraded around social media, and as the show has reached the rooftop and the quantity of action increased, so too has the quality of output from the animators on board this wonderful adaptation. After struggling to maintain its reputation post-time skip, reaching some remarkable lows in Dressrosa, the anime has found itself revitalized. While it of course can't hit the consistency of a 12 to 24 episode seasonal anime, it has confidently cemented itself as the best looking long format show on TV right now. The dramatic increase in quality is the result of a number of staff changes that have slotted together to form the backbone of this production. The biggest change comes in the form of the show's series director. This is the person in charge of the entire production, both as a creative decision maker and final supervisor, meaning they have the last word on every aspect of the production. And it was Tatsuya Nagamine who took over this role, perhaps best known these days for directing Dragon Ball Super Broly and heralding the visual upgrade the Super TV series received in its Universe Survival arc. In a similar vein, one of the very first things Nagamine did in this role was overhaul the show's composite, meaning how the original drawings are treated. their colors, their lighting effects, and even the way the line work looks. He ousted the previous company, Sanko Productions, who had been with the show for 20 years, and instead replaced them with the Asahi Production, one of the most beloved compositing studios in Japan, and the group who defined the look of the One Piece movies Gold and Stampede. Led by Naoyuki Wada, the anime found itself with thick, inky line work, bloom, and intense lighting, creative camera work like depth of field, and a more bombastic approach to the way the cast's powers were displayed. Guided by the series director, it helped bring the anime up to modern standards that allowed even the most basic of scenes to shine brighter than they had ever done before. However, the series director role requires more than just overseeing the finishing of episodes. It's an intensive role that sees Nagamine looking over and often providing corrections for every episode's storyboard. It is so much work. So much so, in fact, that the Wano arc introduced two co-series directors in the form of Kohei Kureta and Aya Komaki, two of the series' most beloved episode directors. With these exceptionally talented staff members leading the production, a show with the scope of One Piece finally received the necessary manpower to ensure its success. And a series can't be made with 3 people, of course, and so a huge number of animators are required to bring the show to life. This is where the production manager comes in. They're the person in charge of gathering talent for each respective episode, and as a result, can be just as important in determining the show's quality than the series director themselves. A man by the name of Tetsuji Akahori plays this role on One Piece and arguably deserves the biggest praise for their role in elevating Wano itself. Akahori is a huge One Piece fan and has routinely gone out of his way to bring the finest animators and directors into the fold. He has reached out to overseas talents on Twitter, bringing in the likes of Vincent Chansard and Glassround, the latter of which we even managed to rope into one of our redraw videos recently, and also brought in the likes of Shu Sugita and Bahi JD, two of the best animators working today. Together with Nagamine and the production assistant Hayato Tokita, Akahori takes a lot of time planning out where best to use these staff members to ensure they have the biggest impact. He has likewise looked inwards at Toei's own staff to help foster talent from within, promoting the likes of Chu Young-soo to animation director, and series veteran Katsumi Ishizuka to the role of action storyboard artist. This has all resulted in an atmosphere where everyone's looking to do their best and their efforts are actually rewarded. For example, Yasunori Koyama, a director who has been with the series for many years without making too much of an impact, has since shot his way up to becoming regarded as arguably the most talented director of the show since the beloved Megumi Ishitani. With this happening more and more, the One Piece team has become hugely popular with the Toei studio itself, with other staff in the company looking up to them as a result of their stellar work. And so, for me, there are 3 episodes that best highlight this monumental achievement the Wano adaptation has become. And not just because of their sheer quality, but because the way they were made is a byproduct of this revitalized work environment. Let's look at a very popular episode, with Megumi Ishitani's episode 1015. It allowed animator Bahi JD to have input not just over how his scene was composited, but what colors were used too. One of the industry's best young animators, Keisuke Mori, was also given the freedom to handle the Yamato and Ace flashback section alone, animating and supervising the entire 8 minutes all by himself. This was the first episode I was told to watch from this raid, and to say I was blown away by this very installment would be a massive understatement. While I might have had issues with how the story and the action was paneled in the manga, the manner with which the powers at be used the source material to create one of the most stunningly beautiful episodes I've ever seen committed to any given series was nothing short of remarkable. Not just providing focus on the action, but showing an attention to detail and metaphor through its use of the Yamato scenes. Utterly unbelievable. Episode 1017 saw the animation director Chu Young-soo personally invite a wealth of talent across Japan alongside his equally skilled friends in China and many others from across the world. The goal of the episode was to surpass any that came before it, and to achieve this, they were granted the freedom to use not 4,000 sheets that would typically be used in a given episode, but instead 20,000 sheets, and boy does it show on screen. And lastly, in episode 1028, the aforementioned Yasunori Koyama took his action direction to new limits, and took full advantage of Asahi Productions' photography skills, putting together a spectacle drenched in atmospheric colors and fascinating portrayals of power. In particular, he took great care over his use of flower petals as a visual metaphor for the narrative of the fight, resulting in not just a feast for the eyes, but one with powerful emotional resonance. These unique additions to the anime are something Oda has said he truly enjoys the most, and it's great to see this happen more often in an arc where the manga version famously off-screens or speeds through many of its events. Ultimately, none of these episodes could have happened without the complete overhaul of One Piece's production environment. For many, the anime version of Wano has now long since surpassed the source material, and even for those who don't quite agree, it's impossible not to sit back and applaud the remarkable upgrade this series has not only seen, but continues to see week after week. It's rare that an anime that has run as long as this finds itself better than ever. But the unrelenting passion within the team continues to bring about new heights, and I can't wait to see how they top themselves next. If you are interested in learning more about the people responsible for this series, I definitely recommend checking out Skippy the Robot's YouTube channel. He provides interesting insight into the behind the scenes week by week, and it's a great way to find out who did your favorite scenes and track their progress in the industry. The link is in the description. As many of you can tell, I was a massive fan of this opening material, and yet this was around about where I started to lose interest in the story reading week to week, would you believe? That's right, for the purpose of this video, I had planned on originally reading this story week to week, but something caused me to stop. What was it, and did the story recover for me after that? Tune in next week when I break down the rest of this raid as well as its ending. I can't wait to share it all with you, and don't worry, I'll make sure to talk about the Yamato stuff next time. But until then, I've been Toy Not Mark. It feels great to be back on the review train, and of course, thank you so much for watching.